Welcome to another stellar edition of Rock It Up. I'm your host, Darren Flower, and today we're talking all about radio and how to get your record on the air. So stay tuned because you'll not want to miss this one. Okay, we are back on Rock It Up TV, and we have a very special guest, Andrea Morris, who's actually been on the show once before.
I can't stay away, Darren.
Oh, well, we love having you back, so you're here again.
Thank
this
you.
time we're going to be talking all about radio, and let's get into your history, because you had come from a very strong radio background, right?
That is correct. I began my career in the music industry in radio as a disc jockey in Jacksonville, North Carolina. I'm American. I'm originally from Cleveland. And my first job was at a station called WXQR, the rock and roll animal, in Jacksonville, North Carolina. And I started off there doing the midnight to 6 shift and then worked my way up to music director. And that was my first gig as a music director in the U.S. at a small station that we actually took from being a station that no one cared about to being a reporting station. And we did that by consistently adding new songs before everyone else did.
And what is a reporting station for the people who don't understand what that is? If you don't mind.
In America, it's different than Canada, and it was different back then. But we reported to a trade magazine called Album Network. And what Album Network did was they recognized stations that were leaders and that were innovative. And we were consistently the first station to go out and play songs that no one else did. We were the first station to play the Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams Are Made of This. And we were the first station to play We Built This City by Jefferson Starship and Tommy Two-Tone 8675309. So by being the station that did that, we got noticed. And then we got reporting status, which then meant that everyone cared about you, and we became a national attention station, which was amazing because we were just in this tiny little area, which was where there are 3 different bases. So there was a big listening population, but it wasn't counted in the ratings because it was transient population. So it was really interesting to do that. And from there, I moved to Los Angeles and worked in market research. Then I went to the UK and worked on the air there. Then came back to the States, was on the air and a music director in Cleveland, and then worked my way into the other side of things, which people in radio refer to what I do as radio promotion as being the dark side. But it's actually, many people on the other side in record labels told me that this was actually the job that I was born to do, which is radio promotion. I started off working at IRS Records in the States and worked with the Buzzcocks and all kinds of really cool bands like that, and then worked for Discovery/Sire Records, and then made my move up to Toronto and worked for various labels in Toronto before I became kind of disillusioned with the independent label scene and started my own company, AM to FM Promotions, which I've had for 10 years now.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
That's a big milestone, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to first start talking about, well, radio, and start at scratch here for the benefit of those who don't know, what we're talking about. So, what is the formats of radio?
Well, let's say you're a band or an artist and you have this great song that you think is fantastic and ready for radio. What you need to understand before your song goes to radio is what are the radio formats. And in Canada, there are fewer formats than there are in America. So in Canada, we have CHR/Top 40, which is your stations in Toronto like a Z103, Virgin Radio, those are CHR stations. Then there's Hot AC, which is also very similar format-wise to CHR. In Toronto, a Hot AC station would be Chum FM. But if you look at the top 10, currently at both Hot AC and CHR, there were 7 songs in common on the top 10 of both formats. So they're very, very similar. CHR tends to be a little bit more urban, and they play more hip-hop, which Hot AC does not. Then we have AC radio, which is adult contemporary, which back in the day was like your Celine Dion, your Michael Bublé, people like that. Now it actually has become more rhythmic, and that format is also very similar to CHR and Hot AC, where they have about 5 songs in common on the top 10 with those other 2 formats.
And I always thought AC meant air conditioning. And after talking to you, I know what it means.
Exactly, adult contemporary. Then you move over where you obviously have country, and country is one standalone format in Canada. And then on the rock side of things, we have 2 rock formats. There's active rock and alternative rock. And those two have pretty much nothing in common. The top 10s for both of those formats are completely separate from each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's a challenge, you know. And then, of course, you have to figure out where your song lies within those formats. Now, as I said, in the U.S., there are a greater number of formats because you've got like rhythmic AC, rhythmic CHR, and urban AC, urban CHR, urban hot AC. We don't have that in Canada because we have a smaller population density, so we have less stations. But you have to figure out where your music lies within that, and can your music actually get airplay on those stations. Now, when you think about that as an artist, when you think about going to radio, as an independent artist, what you also have to think about is you need to have more than one song. You should have and budget for 3 songs at radio because you want to present yourself as a career artist. And if I'm a music director at a radio station and I have 7 spots for currents, I want to make sure that the artist that I play will be there for a second single and for a third single and actually then have another release out. So that I have now taken a Canadian independent artist and built them into being a core artist for my station.
Okay. So here's a hypothetical but not so hypothetical situation. A band just came out with their CD. They spent a good 20, 30K on tracking and studio bills, whatever. What next? What do they do? How do they get out there?
Well, what they should do is before they have even gone into the studio, they should actually have a budget. And they should think in advance, not just for the recording process, but about marketing your tracks. And many, many, many bands and artists, I shouldn't just say bands, many artists make that mistake where they don't budget for the future. They budget for the immediacy of, I'm going to spend tons of money in the studio. You've been in the studio, you know how it all of a sudden takes longer and longer and the cost can build up.
I sure do. I sure do.
But you have to actually, once you have a budget, if you go in with the budget in hand, then you can try to adhere to that and say, no, we need money down the road to promote our tracks. What's the point of having a great record if no one's going to hear it?
I was just going to say that.
So what you need to do is think about the big picture. Think about hiring a publicist. Think about hiring a radio tracker. Think about videos. You have to think about more than just the creative process in the studio and think about building yourself as a career, which is one of the first things I ask artists when they come to me. Is this a hobby or is this a career? Because if it's a hobby, I really can't deal with you.
Right.
I need to work with career artists because I have a reputation at radio for bringing quality tracks and quality artists. I don't work with fly-by-nights.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that a little later on. But let's get into AM to FM promotions.
Sure.
Okay? Now, I know what you do. I very well know what you do. But for the benefit of those who are watching that don't understand, can you please explain exactly what it is you do?
Sure. Radio promotions is in Canada. It's referred to as radio tracking. But basically, what I do is I listen to your music, and I decide if it's actually radio friendly, and I listen to something a lot before I make a decision. A lot of people will listen to a song once and say yeah, yes or no. But for me, I need to live with it because I look at it as this is your career. This could be your one shot, and I need to give you the proper amount of time. And so what I will do is listen to your tracks, figure out which, if you send me a full album, I will listen to the full albums many times and then decide what your top 3 choices are for singles and tell you in what order they should be released. And then tell you what format it should go to and put together a marketing plan for you. If your songs aren't ready for commercial radio, meaning that they don't have a great hook and your song isn't really what's going to fit into any of those formats, then I would recommend a campus campaign. Because campus radio is a whole nother format, and campus radio is so embracing of new artists that might be a little bit left of center for the mainstream, but it's a really great way to start to get your music heard on the radio and to build yourself a profile as an artist and then go to commercial radio.
Wow. You know, this sounds really expensive. Now, here's a real legitimate question. Can artists actually do all this stuff themselves and save on a bundle of money?
Well,
or should they not do that?
Well, if you think that you can call a radio station and get through to a program director, I'd say good luck. Because you have to understand that every week music directors are inundated with music just from DMDS, which for the viewer that doesn't understand what that is, DMDS is a digital post office. So what it is, it's called a digital music delivery service. And what they do is they send your track to radio. You send them an MP3, they send it to the radio to the proper formats. So instead of wasting money pressing a single, you now have it and right at radio, and they can track it. I can track it because I'll get a report saying which radio stations it was sent to, who's viewed it, who's downloaded it, and I can actually go after a radio station and say, this song has been out for a month, you haven't listened to it yet, what's your problem? It gives me way more of an ability to control a track. But backtracking to that, can you do that yourself? You wouldn't know about DMDS probably. You wouldn't know how to track your record properly, and you also have no idea how to get in touch with these people, what their call times are, how many pick a station at random, and I can tell you how many kids the music director has, what his favorite TV shows are, what shows he was at last week, because I have a relationship with him that I've built for over 10 years.
That these bands don't.
No, they don't. And every time you have a relationship with someone, you're paying me for my knowledge and you're paying me for my relationships, because I can open doors for you. Because I do have people that I know, I do have people that trust me, that know that if I'm presenting them with a song, it's a song that's appropriate for them. And it's a song that will work at that format. You as a random artist, if you happen to get through to the music director, they'll tell you anything to get you off the phone. And they've been known to do that. It's just say, yeah, your track is great, bye.
Right.
Because they don't like dealing with artists directly, because artists don't know. Because it's so personal to you, you can't remove yourself from it and hear someone tell you that your song isn't necessarily right. Whereas they can tell that to me, I can tell them they're wrong, and I can build a relationship with them about that because I've been talking to them for 10 years. Right.
So what do you look for in artists that you potentially will work with?
I look for a long-term commitment, and I look for great music. Like I have been a music director who, as I've stated, has picked hits, who knows what a hit record is. So because I will take my experience as being a music director, and I know when I talk to these guys at radio what it is that they want, because I did their job. Right. So I have a unique perspective when I speak to them, which a lot of other people don't. What I look for when an artist comes to me is your song, do you have 3 tracks that are radio friendly? Do you have a budget for those 3 tracks? How can we work together and make this happen? And if your tracks aren't ready for commercial radio, then I'll do a campus campaign with you as well. So there are different options, and I'll work with you and try to figure out budgets and the likes to make something work that we can all agree on and really get behind you as an artist. But the thing is, radio is one piece of the puzzle. What I do is one piece. You also have to work on your own to establish yourself as an artist as well. Social media is huge these days, and radio programmers will look at your social media sites. I provide them with those links, and they will go on your Facebook page. They will check Twitter. They will check all of your social media links to see how active you are as a band. And if you haven't made a post in 2 months, they'll know that, and they'll say, this guy's not really serious. They really check social media, and it's really important to keep that up there. Keep your social media profile really, really active. The other thing is videos. They want to know, do you have a video on YouTube? Where can I see it? What do you look for? And they're going to look for all of that. They want to see tour dates, especially for rock radio. They want to know that you're on tour and that you're working your record. That you're not just a band that put a record out and is doing nothing to promote it.
Well, and why would these important people believe in you when you're not giving them,
you're not
any
believing
reason?
In yourself.
Right.
Exactly. It's like, if you don't care enough about you, why should you expect that anyone else does?
Oh, Andrea, I really enjoyed talking to you. You always have a lot of interesting things to say.
Thanks.
But I am obligated to take a small little break, so when we come back, we're going to talk more about radio, we're going to talk about music meetings, and other fun stuff. So, stay tuned.
Rock It Up would not be possible without the help from our sponsors, like CFRE Radio. For more information, please visit cfreradio.com. Sherwood Mortgage Group. Longtime friends serving longtime customers. Call Chris D'Souza at 416-884-2984. Loretta and Sherilyn Flower at Remax Realty Enterprises. For more information, please visit flowerteamrealestate.com or call 905-822-2200. Nude Buddha Tattoo Studio, located at 42 Bronte Street South, Milton, Ontario. Call 905-203-0737 or visit nudebuddhatattoo.com. Mississauga Arts Council. Connect, create, engage, support. Find them at mississaugaartscouncil.com or on Facebook and Twitter under Miss Arts Council.
Okay, we are back on Rocket Up TV. I'm your host, Darren Flower. We're here with Andrea Morris from AM to FM Promotions, and we're talking about radio, my favorite subject in the whole entire world. So let's talk about music meetings. What are they? Why are they important?
Well, a music meeting is when you have a single that you present to radio, and then I call the radio station and do my thing, get them to listen to the track, and get it to like that enough to bring it into a music meeting. A music meeting at a radio station generally happens once a week, and it's usually with a group of about 4 or 5 people. And what they'll do is they'll sit down and they'll listen to a variety of tracks and decide which one is going to work for their station. Now keep in mind, most radio stations have about 5 to 7 spots for CanCon, which is Canadian content singles, okay? Canadian, and in case everyone's not aware, there is a 35% CanCon directive at radio, which means 35% of the music that they play must be Canadian in content.
Ah, I knew that, but I'm sure a lot of people didn't.
Exactly. So sometimes when you and I have a conversation, we forget that the people that are watching don't necessarily have the knowledge that we do. So sometimes we have to kind of go back and explain these things. So now you're in the CanCon category, okay? Keep in mind that a good single length is about 3 minutes 30 seconds. You really don't want a single to be much longer than that, unless you're Tool. Then you can put out a 10-minute single.
But why?
But
if you don't mind me asking.
It's about trying to get as many songs played as possible on the station. Like back in the 60s, sometimes they would play songs at a higher speed so that they could say, we play more songs than anyone else. You know, and so it's about that amount of time, right? You're thinking about formatting songs and programming songs. If you have a 5-minute single, that takes up literally like more time than any other single, so you're not going to get played as often because everybody has clocks that they have in their hour to fit in the commercials and to fit in music and talk. And in the morning, and if you listen to most morning shows on radio, they don't play a lot of music because it's all talk. Pretty much. They're telling you about the traffic, they're telling you about the weather, they're doing their jokes, and then they'll play like one song, maybe 4 songs an hour on a morning show, whereas in an afternoon, any other time of the day, you're generally getting played maybe about 10 to 14 songs an hour, depending on the length of the song. So one really long song can kind of screw up the whole scheduling and the formatting that way.
Right.
So 3 minutes, 30 seconds, that's about the time you want for a single, okay? Keep in mind, in a music meeting, they don't listen to your whole song. They will generally listen to, if you're lucky, a minute of it. So it's really important, especially if you're thinking about top 40 radio and hot AC, to get to your hook within 30 seconds. Because you have to look at things from the mind of a program director, which is the last thing they want is for someone to be bored and hit that button and switch the station. So they need to make sure that every song they play is a song that's going to capture someone's attention, that's going to get that earworm stuck in their head, that's going to make that person want to turn the radio up as opposed to turning the radio off. Now, I have had this problem with many artists, particularly in the hip-hop genre, who will come to me with a song that reaches the chorus at 1:45, and I'm like, that's way too long. You've lost me before you got to that point.
What were they thinking?
Well, it's all about my art, it's all about my art. Well, that's great, but your art is not a single. Once you get to a status as an artist, like a Beyonce, you can put out a single like Drunk in Love that doesn't have a recognizable hit, a hook rather, because you've got a reputation and everyone wants to know what you're doing because you have now had so many hit singles that people don't really care, they just want to hear it because it's a new Beyonce. I.e. the new Justin Timberlake. You know, when he came out with Suit and Tie, everybody was anxious to hear everything he did, and it wouldn't matter if he had just belched through the whole record because people still wanted to hear it. People would have played it, and they would have played it once or twice, but you know what I mean?
It's JT.
I want to hear it.
I don't even like him.
But you, as a new independent artist, have to be clear that if you want to have a single played on radio, you've got to have a hook. Mm-hmm. You can't make it super long. You've got to, and the production has to be spot on. Mm-hmm. Like, listen to the radio, because your song, depending on the format, say top 40, your song as an independent artist is going to go up against a Beyonce. It's going to go up against any Pitbull, Timbaland track, right? So you want to make sure that your production values are very high as well.
So maybe recording your album or your hit single in your buddy
basement?
Johnny's basement.
It's probably not a good idea.
Probably not a good idea, or
No.
Definitely not a good idea.
I would say definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah, unless Johnny happens to be a multi-millionaire with with huge amount of like millions of dollars worth of equipment, then that would be great.
Yeah, that would
But if
be
Johnny
great.
isn't, then that
Probably not.
Probably not.
No, okay. All right. So going back to these music meetings and these 5, 6, 7 people that sit in, who are these people? What are these titles? Station manager, program director, music director. What does that mean? Well, I know what they mean, but for the benefit of those who don't, can you please explain?
Well, the program director is basically the guy who's in charge of what goes on the air at the station. And the program director's job, generally, music is a small portion of it. What he's concerned about is the overall sound of the station and how the jocks sound and what they're talking about. And he coordinates everything, like all the contesting and all of that. So music is a small portion of what he does. The music director is the person who actually is the liaison between all of the different labels and all of the trackers that we'll call them, and they will basically go through DMDS and see the 40 songs every week that are presented to them and kind of handpick what songs get filtered into the music meeting. There can generally be an assistant program director, an assistant music director in the music meetings, and sometimes they'll just be people that they're grooming up in a chain to, like, that they think these people have a good ear for music, and they'll bring them into the meetings as well. Some stations only have 1 or 2 people in a meeting. Some stations have as many as 7. It varies on the station, it varies on the size.
Right.
But so for what I know that there's 5 people in meeting, I generally hit all 5 of those with emails and phone calls to make sure that somebody on that station is actually pushing my track.
And that's something that a band would probably not get a chance to do.
No, they wouldn't also know about some of the different programs that are available as well, like the Bell Media stations, i.e. at Chum FM. They have 2 programs. They have an Emerging Artist program and they have a Future Star program. And so if your song gets nominated for that and then picked up, you have an automatic top 40 hit because it's their mandate to help independent artists.
I see.
So you wouldn't know that. That's why you hire a tracker, because we have that inside information and we know who to talk to and who to kind of push your track to try to make that happen.
Excellent. So, if a band is considering hiring a radio tracker, and they should, as we've discussed.
Exactly.
Okay, what kind of things should they consider before hiring said tracker?
Well, I think before you hire anybody to work for you as a band, you should do an interview. You wouldn't just go to somebody on the street and go like, hey, you know about radio tracking? Good, we'll hire you. Look at their websites. Find out who their clients were. And don't be afraid. Most radio trackers do post a list of who their past clients were. Don't be afraid to reach out to them and say, what was your experience working with this person? Were you happy with the results? You should interview everyone that works on your team to make sure they're the right person for you. When you go into a studio, you don't go to the first producer that you meet. You find a producer that actually gels with you, that works with you. Find a radio tracker. Ask them how many bands do they represent at any one given time. Because if someone is calling a radio station about 20 artists that they have on their roster, you're not a priority. You have to understand that. I've worked in the major label system, and you would go into C radio with a sheet with maybe like 5 or 6 pieces of paper together that were all of your priorities. But basically your top priorities were the top 3. And any music director, and my experience as a music director was always, what are your top 3 priorities? Because nobody wants to hear you list 20. You have to limit it to 3, which is why my company, I only work 3 artists per format at any given time, because I understand priorities and I want you to be a priority. There are other people who will charge much less than I do, who also work tons more artists than I do. So you have to say, do you want to be quality? Do you want quantity? What is it that you want? Maybe I'm not the right fit for you. Maybe you're more comfortable with somebody else. A lot of radio trackers also do publicity as well. My belief is do one thing and do it well. Right. So I don't do publicity. But what I also do is I look out for opportunities for my bands on many different levels. Like I'm always going, oh, I've heard about this festival that's looking for people. Here, apply for this. Oh, here's a promoter that's looking for bands to book. Here, give him your information. I always look for opportunities for my artists because my feeling is that we're a team and I need to help you build your career as well. Right. And there are things that can build your career outside of just radio tracking. You need to look for the right fit for yourself as an artist when you're talking to a tracker. But you should also know what questions to ask. And don't make everything just about price. Mm-hmm. Because you get what you pay for.
Well, good isn't cheap and cheap isn't good, is it?
No.
No.
Not necessarily, no.
Right.
Yeah. And also be prepared to explore the options of campus campaigns as well. Because, like I said, campus is a really good place to start. Not everyone's ready for commercial radio right away.
Right.
And campus is really fantastic for embracing those new artists.
Okay. Well, now, I'm going to ask you a question, and I know the answer to it, again, as always, but...
Am I going to give the right answer?
Yes, you will. I can just sense this. But, okay, why is radio play so important for a young, up-and-coming band? Some people don't understand. They just think it's, my song's on the radio, famous, and... But really, look, the big picture here, why do people need
Radio play actually fuels gigs, because most of the big agencies will look for where are you getting radio airplay, and should I take you on as a band to represent? Because if you do have radio airplay, then agencies know that they can book you in bigger clubs, because you will have a brand recognition. So your band name is basically your brand, and you have band recognition. You have that brand recognition. So that really, really helps when it comes to that. It also obviously fuels sales. You'll get publishing money from being played on. You'll get your performance royalties from being played on the radio. It raises your level, your interest level as a band. You've got all this. You'll have more people talking about you. You'll get interest in some of the trade papers online and the like. People will talk about you, and basically that's what you want, right?
Now, unfortunately for us, now I could talk about this for literally hours at a time, but we're pretty much done for today, unfortunately. So if people want to learn more about this and learn more about you, where can they go?
They can go to my website, which is am2fm.com, and that's amtofm.com. There's a lot of information on there. Actually, there's several articles that I've written on that website about the music industry that will really help as well. And you can always feel free to contact me. My contact information is on there, and I'd be more than willing to listen to your tracks and tell you if you're going to be a hit artist.
That's amazing. Well, thank you very much, Andrea,
Thank you, Darren.
for doing my show again. And you'll be...
I hope to be back again.
Well, you will be back again. I hope. I promise.
Thanks.
Okay. Excellent. I'm going to call her right away as soon as this is done. But until next week, remember to rock it up.
Rock It Up would not be possible without the help from our sponsors, like CFRE Radio. For more information, please visit cfreradio.com. Sherwood Mortgage Group. Longtime friends serving longtime customers. Call Chris D'Souza at 416-884-2984. Loretta and Sherilyn Flower at Remax Realty Enterprises. For more information, please visit flowerteamrealestate.com or call 905-822-2200. Nude Buddha Tattoo Studio, located at 42 Bronte Street South, Milton, Ontario. Call 905-203-0737 or visit nudebuddhatattoo.com. Mississauga Arts Council. Connect, create, engage, support. Find them at mississaugaartscouncil.com or on Facebook and Twitter under Miss Arts Council.